What's good, people? Fingers here, and I just completed my inaugural playthrough of Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous, and I felt like running my mouth about the game just a little bit because if you look up mixed bag in the dictionary, you would find a picture of this game staring right back at you. Now, when you first fire up your copy of Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous, the first thing you're going to want to do is go into your settings. You're going to skip over the graphics options for now. I know we all love to configure our graphical things, but we're going to skip over that. You're going to go right into the sound tab. Now you're going to want to go to voice volume, and you're going to want to turn that slider all the way to 0, because if you suffered through the voice acting of Pathfinder Kingmaker, they do not disappoint this time around either. I suffered through about 10 minutes of this terrible, terrible voice acting, and I just shut it off for good because a pet peeve of mine, and this is a cancer in all modern day RPGs, is these developers feel the need to have every single line of dialogue voiced by the characters. So a paragraph of text will pop up on your screen, and some cunty Californian voice actor will recite the whole dang thing to you. And if you, like myself, can read pretty quick, you're done with the paragraph before they are on word 3, and I can't help it. If I'm seeing text on the screen, I'm reading it. The only way I can avoid that is to literally turn my head away from the screen, because, come on, we're gamers. We process information pretty dang fast, and I can't help but read these things, and having some jerkbag voicing what I just read in my ear while I'm reading along, it's distracting. So I had to get rid of the voice acting altogether. Even if the voice acting were good, that is still a pet peeve of mine, and trust me folks, it is not good. And I'm being extra harsh here because, like I said, I only listened to about 10 minutes of it before I couldn't take it anymore, and I had to shut it down. I played through Kingmaker before this. The voice acting was atrocious in that game as well, and I just wasn't gonna put up with it. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. It just, God. And if any developers happen by this video, let your old boy Fingers just give you some advice. If you want to do voice dialogue in your games, Baldur's Gate, the original Baldur's Gate, did it best. How did they do it best? There's like 12 lines of dialogue per character in that game. They give you just a taste of what the character sounds like in order to establish their character better. That's all you need. For example, let's take a popular choice, Minsk. And for those of you who don't know who Minsk is, Minx and his hamster Boo are going to kick evil's buttocks. Now, with that one line of dialogue, I think you got a pretty good vibe about who Minsk is as a person. And it goes that way for all the characters of Baldur's Gate. You just need a little taste, and you can establish character from tone and tenor, and that's all you need. You don't need every voice line voiced by not even Hollywood's B team, Hollywood's D team. These people are not good enough to act on the WB. That's why they're voice actors. So just, please, in the future, just less is more, guys. Less is more. And following up on my gripes about the voice acting is the dialogue of this game is atrocious. Whoever the writing team is who constructed the dialogue for this game, oh God, you people need help. Now, the writing in this game is a mixed bag. The world building is exceptional. The quest design is great. A lot of intriguing mysteries, a lot of great setups, but it is all let down by the inane and just terrible dialogue, terrible descriptions. It's very, very amateurish writing. And you can see the disconnect here because Pathfinder is, at its core, a tabletop RPG. And Owlcat Games did an admirable job translating that into video game form. All credit to them for that. But all the world building was done by Paizo, the original writers of Pathfinder. In fact, this whole game is an adaptation of a Pathfinder adventure path from 7 or 8 years ago. So that is why you see this stark disconnect of the quests, of the world building, of the setup, because Golarion is a fantastic fantasy world. It's in many ways your bog standard high fantasy setting, but Paizo twisted it about 15-20% and truly made it unique in their own. The lore behind their elves is really interesting. The lore behind their gnomes, especially, I really like what they do with the gnomes and their history. It's very, very cool. So the world building, top notch. The scenario, top notch. The setting, top notch. It is failed by its characters and its writing. And that is 100% Owlcat Games' purview. They're the ones who failed this in the writing, in the dialogue. I swear to God, I have never seen any work use the word cringe in their dialogue, in their writing, more than this game. Like, everybody in this game cringes at one point or another. You know, Regil cringes as he says the word. What? The Holy Queen, the leader of the Crusades, the holy symbol of righteousness and virtue, cringes at one point in this game. And you would think holy paladins and symbols of Crusades don't ever cringe. They might deeply contemplate something or rub the bridge of their nose in an exasperated fashion, but they don't cringe. So whatever millennial twat waddle wrote that shit, Owlcat, you can do better. And while we are on the subject of the writing of this game, that brings us to the real elephant in the room on this game, and that is Owlcat Games is a very, let's just be charitable and call them a progressive company. And that bleeds in to the writing of this game in a very, very negative way. I assure you, if you look up the writing staff for this game, you're going to find a bunch of obnoxious Twitter pests with some of the most asinine posts on the planet. If you go and look that up, I'm not a big Twitter guy. I haven't done that. This is a prediction. If you go out, if you do that, by all means, let me know in the comments whether I'm right or not. But methinks I'm on to something here. Now, I got 2 black characters during my playthrough. I believe there's more. The brother of one of the characters I got, I believe, is a playable character. But depending on which path you walk in the game, you cannot get every recruitable character in one playthrough. Now, you can tell that Owlcat Games was terrified of portraying these characters in a negative light. And as a result, these 2 characters were hands down the most boring planks of wood on my team. Now, don't get me wrong. The characters range from pretty much passable to insufferable to just nothing. And I would say that nothing is the middle ground here. These 2 characters, you get a paladin and a cleric are the 2 black characters that I had. And the paladin's plotline was she was mad at herself because she could do better. And she kept blaming herself for things largely out of her control. So the game happens, you deal with problems as they come, and she kind of says, it's my fault. If I wasn't such a dum-dum, I'd get the wrong. But she never makes a crucial mistake. She doesn't do anything that's truly negative. She just kind of blames herself. And the culmination of her arc is, she learns to be better, to be a better person. And it was just the most asinine and boring quest line in the, oh god, hers was probably the most bleh, just like so much nothing, so much nothing. And the cleric that you get, his whole plot line was he he was an idealist coming in, and now he learned that war im bad. That was his whole kind of progression. And he has a whole thing where he's looking for his brother. And but at one point, this cleric starts gambling and playing cards with the soldiers. And that's a bad. And he learns that he shouldn't gamble with his friends during times of Holy Crusade because damned if I know. But can you see the lack of substance with these characters? Now, they could have done something interesting, like perhaps the cleric is real racist towards elves, or something like that, where he's this pious, holy man, right? In all regards, virtuous, helps the needy and all this. But those damn knife ears, just unacceptable to him, And you would have had this black character being disgustingly racist towards elves, and his whole thing could have revolved around him coming to accept an elf companion or something along those lines. Something, but Owlcat Games was scared to do something like that. I mean, it doesn't have to be that, but you understand what I'm saying. They were terrified of giving these characters any real pathos. I mean, the reason everybody loves Legolas and Gimli is because the elves and the dwarves friggin' hate each other. And seeing these two come together, overcoming that difference for a greater good, is one of the best parts of Lord of the Rings, man. When they're counting off who can drop more orcs, 42, 43. And it's awesome to behold. And to be honest, thinking about it, in Kingmaker and in Wrath of the Righteous both, I don't recall any racial animus amongst any of the elves, the dwarves, the humans, the gnomes, the halflings, the tieflings. Well, the tieflings are oppressed for their demonic heritage, right? But it's very shallow in its applications. You never really see any strong negatives in that regard, and you do have a tiefling companion in this game, and he kind of complains about it, but that's about the long and the short of it. It never really manifests itself in any strong way. And again, this is where real life politics bleeds into your fantasy fiction writing scope, and really hampers what could be. And you wanted your diversity characters, you wanted more black folk in your game, but you're scared to make them characters. You're scared to make them real, and as a result, they were the most boring characters in the game. And as a result, I never used them just because they were boring. And the paladin is hands down the best tank you're gonna get in your game. But moving on from the bad, let's talk about the good. This game gives you options for days. There are so many character classes that you can run through, so many different builds you can experiment with, magic items for days and days and days. Add on to that, there's like 9 or 10 or somewhere in the dozen range of mythic paths you can walk down. Now, you've got your character class, your bog standard D&D style fighter, wizard, rogue, that kind of thing. And you can get 20 levels in any character class like that. And then you have your mythic path, which is basically where your superpowers come from. And you've got things like angel, demon, trickster, lich, swarm, which is basically you turn yourself into a swarm of bugs with a hive mind consciousness. So your body is basically just thousands of bugs swarming together, and they all share a hive mind. So you've got a lot of interesting choices. So not only do you have the dozens and dozens of different character classes, each of which has like 5 sub classes within the class. So combination for days there. And then you add on the mythic path that you can walk, and your options are near limitless. It would be impossible for one person to play through them all. It just can't be done. Heck, even with a vast player base, I don't think you could experiment with all the possible combinations. And that is fan-freaking-tastic. Choice for days. And the gameplay is fantastic when it works. Now, this is a typical of Owlcat games. Kingmaker was released a buggy mess. Pathfinder is no different. There are tons of bugs, tons of missing animations, missing character portraits, missing item portraits, missing descriptions. There are glitches in the gameplay itself. Some skills don't work as intended. The Crusade mechanic, which is layered on top of your typical isometric RPG combat, which is grid-based tactical combat. There are all kinds of problems there. It's honestly, it is unacceptable to release a game this buggy, this much of a mess. And I know what you're thinking, 2021. Yeah, releasing a buggy, incomplete game in 2021. Wow, who'd have thunk they would stoop to such a level? But what makes this extra egregious is, one, they had a long-standing beta out there, and the bugs that I ran into were glaringly obvious. They were just like, how was this not corrected? How this item doesn't have a picture on it? This item doesn't have a description in it. Like, what are you guys? How did anyone miss this? And it's just very frustrating, especially when you consider the second thing, and that's this game is basically just an add-on to Pathfinder Kingmaker, more or less. There is very little difference in Kingmaker and Wrath of the Righteous. So they had a whole previous game that they worked out all these bugs for. And basically, this is just another story, same engine, same anything. I know they revamped classes, they streamlined some things, but that's all polish, right? The original bugs of all this should have been ironed out when you ironed out all the bugs in Kingmaker, because basically you're just making new maps, implementing new dialogue, implementing new magic items, implementing new class skills and features on top of the engine and the combat system that you already had constructed and that you are largely copy and pasting from Kingmaker into this. And it baffles me that the game released as such a buggy mess, even after, and this is their second outing with this same system. So it's just, guys, what are you doing? How was this allowed to happen? But when it works, the combat is immensely satisfying. As I said, you've got magic items for days, you've got great options for character builds, and you can, whatever characters you happen to pick up, you can morph them into, and you can pick up the paladin and turn them into a barbarian or a wizard if you want to, and just make whatever team you want. And you can also go hire mercenaries if you don't like any of the characters you've been saddled with. You can just make a full custom party of your own and roll like that. And the gameplay is fun. It's challenging. I played it on the baseline mode, and I ran into some walls where I had to really rethink my tactics, do things differently, and it was a lot of fun, especially towards the end. Good stuff all around, and just the level of experimentation you can get into is truly remarkable. Just if you're running it on like the insane difficulty or the unfair difficulty, you're not going to want to experiment too wildly, because it literally says in the description, you have to have a real good understanding of the Pathfinder system, and your builds must be perfect. And that is no lie. I am no master of the Pathfinder system. I have a baseline CRPG knowledge, baseline D&D knowledge. I played Kingmaker, so I have a baseline Pathfinder knowledge. But there are still many things I don't understand about the system, and I was going a lot on, okay, I assume this works. I assume these two abilities, synergize with each other. I could be correct, I could be incorrect, but I just rolled with it. And you can look up this stuff. Anything that might be confusing, I'm sure there's Reddit posts for days that can clarify all of that. And that is about the sum total of it. I recall I played this version 1.0.0, the original release, and I was able to get through 95% of the game until I ran into something that was what I would term game breaking, and where the last mythic quest line, the culmination of your mythic quest line, whatever you chose, I did a full angel playthrough. I made what was it? A something oracle, a fervor oracle, or something, just like crazy. Like I wanted to play a crazy religious zealot, striking down demons with righteous, holy fury. Devils be damned. And I had a blast doing that. And it was great because the Oracle is basically a cleric. So I always had my healing on lock. I made him just specialize in healing and support. And so it's great when your main character does that, because then you can play around with all kinds of character classes, all the others, because your healing and your buffs are on lock 100% of the time. It was fantastic, but the culmination of my mythic quest line would not unlock. It says go to this temple to finish things up. I go there, nothing happens. I'm like, do I have to talk to someone? Talk to everyone? Nothing happens. So, of course, I take to the interwebs, and they say, yep, this thing is glitched. So I go, ugh. Okay, so I patched the game, and that's to say I had to re-download the game from GOG and to get the latest, which is 1.0.7 F or G, or one of those. I believe there's a 0.8 out now, but I understand that that's broken some previous things. So, God. After I did that, I moved my save file in there, and it worked, although my character portrait disappeared. And every time I walked on screen, my main character was surrounded by what looked like a spell effect of chains wrapped around him. So for the rest of my few hours in the game, I had that graphical glitch on my main character, which was annoying, though not game breaking like the mythic path, which did resolve when I updated to the semi latest patch. So if you are going to give this game a shot, and I recommend you do, because to me, gameplay, first and foremost, in any game. If you got great gameplay that makes me think, that gives me so many strategic options, I am all in, despite your terrible, terrible characters and dialogue, especially on a second playthrough where I can skip most of that because I already know what they say. And boys, I'm someone who dives in and does everything in a game. I like to get the most bang for my buck. I love to explore. I like to read. I do all the I exhaust my dialogue options. I do all the side stuff. I do everything when I jump into a game. But I do also like replaying games only if I really, really like the combat. Crank up the difficulty level, get it in, experiment with different builds, and I probably will go in for another round of this, probably walking the path of the Lich or the Swarm, because that just sounds like a world of fun. But I would give it some time. Wait for these incompetent buffoons at Owlcat Games to smooth out the glitches in their game, because I rate this as still, it's unplayable still. I was able to get through it, but again, I had to do several workarounds. I had to reload saves at points in order to try doing something different so something didn't lock up. there's just too much wrong that's really immersion breaking, that's really annoying. Things that should not be there, things that should have been caught in the beta phase. Hell, they shouldn't have even been issues in the beta phase because these are issues that should have been worked out when they were debugging the mess that was Kingmaker. So if you're going to give this one a try, give it a few months. Let them iron it out. Wait for them to come out with the... I believe they have expansions planned for this, just like they did Kingmaker. Wait for them to release other expansions and get the bundle pack. So this game is hopefully is completely playable with minimal bugs that will annoy you as it annoyed me. Thank you for listening to this rambling if you made it to the end. And remember, don't get captured.